Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this out there on the World Wide Web. This is Jeremy Geelan for SYS-CON TV. We're here in our Times Square studios, you can see behind me, and in front of me, you can see two distinguished guests. I will tell you who they are in a moment. But first, let us tell you that we're going to be addressing virtualization management. We're going to be looking at its pitfalls. We're going to be looking at ways to avoid those pitfalls. That is why I'm delighted to have with me Olivier Thierry from Zenoss. Please, sir. Tell us a bit about yourself, Olivier.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Yes, as you said, I'm with Zenoss. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Zenoss, but more importantly, I'm at a moment in my career where it's terribly important to see this change that we've got going on in the industry right now. I'm here for the conference, for the Virtualization Conference, and I think big things are happening in this industry, and I couldn't be more delighted to be part of it right at this moment in time.
A passionate champion
Yes.
of virtualization. I love that. We also have with us Kent Erickson. Kent, where do you fit in the great scheme of things, sir?
Well, I'm product management at Zenoss, and my job is to build the products for the exciting challenges that people are having in the world of virtualization, cloud computing, and I'm just thrilled to be here.
Okay, well now I know, Olivier, Kent, welcome to New York. I know that people watching this already are saying, this is very strange. Virtualization management, it said. I clicked through on this video, and already I've had words like exciting, and I've heard passion. Why could that possibly be? It is a fascinating area, but what is it about virtualization? It's just hardware, Olivier. It can't possibly be engaging intellectually. Oh. Why is it you're so passionate about it?
Let me see now. Unix was just hardware. Client server.
Okay, touche.
Client server was just hardware. What we have right now is yet again another wave. Virtualization changes everything. Everything that we've known and seen will change because of virtualization. Now, some of our viewers out there might not yet be at that point where they're seeing that tipping point of everything changes.
But that would be because they haven't implemented sufficient amount, or
well, yeah. I mean, I think it starts off with, hey, let's go and virtualize a few servers and let's save some money.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, as you implement more and more and more, you realize, oh my goodness, everything changes. So it really is a dramatic shift that we're seeing going on.
And is there a danger? I mean, people are watching because they've perhaps seen that word pitfalls and thought, aha, they're going to confess. Is it your experience that there are people who, you know, are dabbling a little too much and haven't pushed to that tipping point so they get that it changes everything?
Well, it just depends on how risky you are. For example, if it's like saying, well, let me go out and take that Formula One out for a spin, but I don't have my racing driver's license, and
pot around the track.
Yeah, you might be spinning a few times, but no. In all seriousness, you will push the boundaries as you grow into more and more virtualization in cloud, and as you push those boundaries, you're going to find the limits of the technology today in terms of where it puts stress. Things on the network, for example, it adds new stress on the network. It adds new stress in the area of the organization. It adds new stress in the area of server sprawl, of virtual server sprawl. There's a few areas where if you're not careful, you'll go, oh. And what we can do in this course of this session is to talk about a few of those areas. It's a journey.
Of those things, Ken, just those ones, is there a kind of a pecking order of the importance of those different problem sets?
There's a pecking order. When Olivier says it changes everything, you really need to look at everything from the hardware through the tools that you're using to the impact of creating lots and lots more servers than you've ever created before. You have to remember where they all are, and everyone is changing every day. It affects the way you have to think about performance and availability. You really need to look at it end to end.
But does that mean, so once people understand the multiplicity of it, right, once they get past that mental barrier, I mean, it sounds to me like you're emboldening them. You don't think that that's a barrier. Everything like this can be managed. What do you think we're doing? So is that part of the evangelism that you have to say, I see where you're heading, you've dabbled, you've got to that tipping point, now you're suddenly a little bit frit maybe that, ugh. But this is, my friend, this is the most wonderful moment because now we can take you to the next. Is it like that you have to sort of, you know, nurse people through a curve of some sort?
There is a curve, and some of it is a little bit more bumpy. It's kind of like if you had to go break through the speed of sound and you've never done it before, you will find that you'll go through a period of turbulence, and then when you get to the other side, it's actually very smooth sailing.
Right,
very
if
fast.
you don't know that at the time.
You don't know
so
that
there
at the time.
comes that moment.
There,
No, I
yeah,
get it.
so there's a zone of turbulence where I think they're going to get...
The zone of virtualization.
The zone of
You're entering the zone of virtualization.
Exactly.
Please do not panic.
That's right. Please wear your seatbelt and...
Zenoss is here to help you.
Yes, we're going to help in certain areas, but in other areas, it'll be how you organize your company.
Right.
We've been siloed for many, many years. And virtualization, if we...
It's horizontal.
It's horizontal, and it's converged.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, things that you would have normally say, well, that's siloed, that's the network guy, that's this, that's that, and that's this. Now all of a sudden, all comes together, and you have to think of it very, very differently.
Yeah.
So the organization changes as well, not just the tools.
Yeah.
How on earth does a company like yours engage with, let's say, with my company to make sure? So I'm possibly experiencing some of these pain points, possibly this sense of disorientation, this sense of there's so much to keep track of. Why did we get into this? Right. What would be the most typical pain points? And two, I reach out to you, and then what? What do you tell me? How does it work?
Well, the very first area is you have to understand what you have and where it sits and where things are. So we believe.
But it sounds like my first problem is that I don't know that. That was why I'm calling.
So discovery.
Right, exactly.
So discovery, automatic discovery, and also understanding that things move. If you really push the bounds of virtualization and use things like dynamic resource management or vMotion, as it's called in VMware, where you've got one VM that's now being moved to another server, etc., your configuration has changed. Well, if you're troubleshooting your environment, you must know this. You have to know what your configuration is at that moment in time. The most difficult thing to understand in the dynamic data center is what your current configuration is. Right. So discovery and rediscovery.
Yes,
and
I like that because it's a continuum.
It's continuous. And so it's the real-time infrastructure. And so getting a good understanding of what you've got, where it is, what's running where, is the first step, I think.
Yeah, and Jeremy, the reason that that's important that I'm seeing is that the teams of people that are running the computers in the environment, the operations staffs, there's enough change going on automatically in a virtualization environment that all of the models, the mental models that they used to have of what the hip bone was connected to the leg bone. Well, the hip bone is not connected to the leg bone today. It moved over and it's connected up to the shoulder.
We should just linger on that a moment because that's actually true. I think that's going to resonate with people viewing this. They're saying, you know what, I hate to admit it to myself, but there's a truth in that. I'm kind of set in my ways. And what I'm hearing here, in a gentle way, and in an enthusiastic way, in a business-relevant way, is that, maybe it is time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is time. Just because it changes everything doesn't mean it can't also change my everything.
Yes.
And it changes the notion of service delivery dramatically, because when you were on the hook in IT operations to deliver service and you had your mental models and you knew physically what was running on which servers, you could pretty much tune that server with extra capacity and guarantee that you'd hit the service levels. But now when workloads are moving about, you're not so sure anymore that you can actually meet those service levels. So your mental models have been blown up, and now you need to depend on the as currently moving model. So the model, having a dependency model really becomes critical in this world of managing virtualization.
Does the advent of cloud computing and its continual association with virtualization, whether we can discuss whether that's a complete overlap or not, does it perhaps help sensitize people to the dynamism of it? I mean, if they don't understand that IT is dynamic now, then they never will. So is that helping you when evangelize around the topic and helping you just in real conversations with real clients? Because they get that.
Yeah, absolutely. The cloud computing, the thought process behind cloud computing helps people think about how they can get the most out of virtualization. People often start in virtualization merely as a server consolidation, cost reduction kind of process, figuring out how to reduce costs when all of the servers that they've got are running at 5 or 10% CPU utilization. And what they find out is that in order to reach that next step, to jump over the hurdle and to make a big difference in their business, they need to think about the dynamism. The cloud computing pulls them right to dynamism because it gets you to, well, what if I could turn a server on and off on a minute-by-minute basis to address capacity needs? Virtualization can do that same same thing for the internal operations of the company without having to go outside the company, but it's a hurdle to think of it very, very differently. So absolutely, thinking about cloud computing and even taking use of it will help you get the most out of virtualization too.
This is sort of a different way of looking at it. Did you ever think to yourselves, I know you're both, very thoughtful people, and you write and you think and you speak about technology. Do you ever wonder whether that notion of server sprawl was perhaps a disservice? Because it's such a catchy term, and as a problem said, it could be solved. But it seems, it's not that it's trivial, but it's not as interesting as what you just talked about. Mm-hmm. It's not as relevant to business strategically. Was it maybe that we came at virtualization differently? Because, it's kind of stuck at that 5% level, didn't it, for a long time, and then it sort of, now it's advancing again. And sometimes I wonder about the terminology.
I think just like the early stages of breaking through the sound barrier, the very first areas of friction are server sprawl. We're going to carve right through that, and we'll be beyond server sprawl.
Right, but I'm thinking that did people think it was an endpoint? That's really
my
mistakenly and inadvertently, did we make them think? Well, that's what virtualization. Well, like you're saying, virtualization is about cost reduction. No,
right?
Well, but you said no. I said all sorts of other things. Oh well, I didn't hear that part. I like the cost. You know what I mean? It's when you push through these new technologies, managing it is of course difficult from our point of view, from the technology end.
I think it's predominantly, there is certainly about saving costs, but I think agility is the biggest area. I mean, when you're able to turn on additional capacity. For example, we have a customer not too far from here in the garment district, and who's a fashion retailer that they have 36-hour flash sales, and all of their applications are in the cloud, and our software runs in the cloud with them and managing it.
Right.
And it's fascinating. Their business is fascinating because basically they'll turn on servers as their demand for that 36-hour flash sale grows, and they'll turn it down and turn it up, and it's completely flexible and on demand. And that, to me, is not only is that a cost saving, but it's also the agility to deal with the business volume is fascinating.
Yes.
And I think that's very different. So that example of cloud is wonderful. Now, the flip side is there are some dinosaurs out there. Now, we don't want to really pick on the dinosaurs too much, but there are some folks who will say, "Oh, cloud. We've had a cloud in our enterprise for years." And the answer is no. They've had siloed operations for years, and just because you might think that you can turn them on and turn them off, you think of it as cloud, is not true whatsoever. There's a very different horizontal organization in terms of horizontal and vertical scaling that occurs when you go outside and think of a grid, and we don't quite get that internally. And so, consequently, I think that there's a misnomer or a misrepresentation in a lot of companies where they're saying, "Oh yeah, we've got cloud inside our company."
Right.
And I don't think they're anywhere near what we just described before, and be able to turn on capacity, turn down capacity, treat it as a service. I think that there's a long way to go for companies inside.
What do we do when you're utterly convinced about something, as you both are?
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah.
And you're with a company that doesn't get it. I mean, there would be an example. Does one have a duty of care to really just disabuse them of the misapprehensions and really straighten them out? Or do you just have to go, well, it's a free world. I mean, knock yourselves out if you think that's cloud. We've got some people over here who are really transforming their entire business, so maybe we'll go and work with. I mean, I'm just interested personally.
Actually,
how does that work?
The answer is call higher in the account. Those people who actually...
Oh, okay, because it's inconceivable that a really adept C-level exec would make that mistake.
The silo, the folks in the silos don't necessarily want that change.
Okay, very
Whereas
good. Very good. That's a very good answer.
As soon as you get above the silos, you get a very astute CIO or even a CFO will go, why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing that internally? I mean, I understand the security issues of a public cloud, but we could do a virtual private cloud, and why aren't we doing that? The answer is the silos are in the comfort zone. So a lot of the change that we're seeing, a lot of the difficulty in absorbing the change, whether it's virtualization or cloud, is really organizational more than it is technological.
So one could imagine, this, this friction guy going, hey, I don't need to tell you about the burdens and the risks of multi-tenancy. This is going nowhere. But really, one must just simply say, take a chill pill. Look, this is being solved all around us. We just need to get with it because it's now or never. I mean, he needs to change.
Right. I mean, we had in the early years of Windows servers, both Kent and I were in a company that sold tools into the Windows environment. When we first walked into the data centers, they would say, "Oh, you want the toy department? It's over there." I mean, the toy department, I mean, real people don't run their data centers on Windows servers. Right. And over time, of course, that's what we do. Right?
Well, that's again your mental, it's not quite mental maths, it's almost like neural paths. You're going down the path that you go down. You're just going to keep doing the same thing. When you've sort of seen cloud computing, rip through the industry, how often do people say something as simple as, so, do we have to use virtualization to put up a cloud? I mean, do you have to talk around that?
No, it's synonymous. I don't think you can ever think of deploying instantaneously, deploying and spooling up that many servers without virtualization.
So I suppose what I'm looking at is what, everyone gets that at least.
Everybody,
that's what I'm trying to fish for. What does everyone get? And what are the issues that they just need a little help?
Everybody gets that. What they don't get is what's the finesse difference between cloud and virtualization. Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. So they get.
Let us help them. We have all these millions of people.
Right.
Now they're taking notes.
I mean, they understand virtualization, but then cloud is essentially the fabric that ties together the virtualization bits together with the on-demand power grid, if you will, as well as the organization of it into essentially an on-demand service.
Yeah, I think of virtualization as the tools that allow you to build the cloud, whereas the cloud, when I'm thinking about cloud, what I think is that it's a business process change more than it is a technology change.
But that's that's quite an unusual message. I mean, it's becoming now, I think, more consensual, but you're quite far ahead with that. Because, of course, people like the other stuff first, and they like the cost stuff, and they like this stuff. But you're absolutely right, that you're going to be saying the same thing about cloud. You're just talking about virtualization. You'll dabble in it, the turbulence will come.
Right.
Yeah, that conversation, I'm not hearing it, but it'll come. Yes.
I mean, cloud is the fabric for business agility, the way I see it.
That's a beautiful phrase. Cloud is the fabric for business agility.
Yes.
That is a great phrase.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly
and it's enabled by converging technologies. For example, if you look at UCS, which is Cisco's Unified Computing, there's another example of convergence of network, storage, and virtualization in a box. It's a data center and a fridge, if you will, and perfectly suited for things like cloud and highly virtualized dynamic data centers. So the technologies are converging to allow that fabric for business agility to occur. And so I think, as Kent says, it's really virtualization is a layer of technology and tooling that enables that business agility.
Let's talk a little bit about organizations, because I noticed both of you are being terribly careful to ground this technological opportunity in the context of an organization, and that one must be aware of those issues. I'm so old that I grew up with the notion of the anthropologist as hero. Are we moving into an age perhaps where the CFO and the CIO, in exactly this context, they're able now to become heroes again if they champion this and ride it in to the organization, because it checks out, right? I'm thinking that maybe CIOs are back. I don't want to offend CIOs, but it seems to have sort of sexed up their role a little bit now, because they become change agents. They can sit in the business as they've always wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the promise of a radically simplified approach for business agility from IT is there.
Right.
And I think it's not just blowing up the mental maps that we talked about, it's blowing up the organizational maps.
Oh, this is getting more.
No,
it really is.
Right.
It's just interesting to hear you say.
You have to think horizontally. Yeah. You have to think of delivering service to your customer. It's not about, oh, gee, this is the way we manage our Oracle database, and that's the way we've been doing it for 30 years. Well, that's very nice, but that's not the way you manage it in the cloud operation. That's not the way you should be thinking about it. You should be thinking about the actual business service and how to do that very differently. And that means that for a lot of organizations, it's going to require some significant change. And I think the organizations that get it have this sort of like mental math equation, which is The pain to change will be, when that is less than the pain to stay the same,
Yeah.
it happens.
It happens.
Because they get to...
It is a little algorithm.
Well, they get to the point where staying the same is very, very painful. I mean, they're either losing business agility, their costs are out of control, and they go, we have to change.
Right.
And at that point in time, there are some terrific alternatives now to go and do so. I mean, it's not like, well, we're just going to improve our management tools, or we're just going to improve a little bit of our automation. There are significant technologies now in virtualization and cloud that allow you to do some seriously different things in business.
I'm going to ask you for an analogy. Feel free to raise your hand. No, just answer. I'm British, as we know. British Airways underwent one of these massive changes. It is relevant, not to do with virtualization. The change.
I thought it had to do with Sir Richard Branson. I thought it had to do with Sir Richard Branson.
Yeah, well, maybe the change agent in this case, the guy who drove that through, said, "So I took over a company with employees who were interested in planes, and I had to turn it into a company of employees who were interested in people."
It's a great analogy.
Nothing less than that. That's what he did. Yeah. And you think, that's so electrifying. It's still now. And I said, that is how to manage change. Actually see what it is at that meta level and then go for it. So I'm just thinking, is there anything in technology where you're not trying to root people out, we're not going to make it oppositional, but what is the dynamic there? What have people got to think? I mean, you've said services,
don't fall in love with the technology. Right. Fall in love with the business model.
But I came to it because I love technology. What do you do with these people? I'm just interested because I have no idea what the answer is to what you do with somebody who's simply married to technology when you really want them to be married to your business.
Well, again, I think if you are dialoguing at a high enough level in the organization,
not an issue,
you can alienate or push down that objection and go, wait a minute, it's not just because Harry has been doing this for 30 years that we should continue to do that, or it might have been wonderful 30 years ago, but now we need to make a different business decision. And I think that's it. I mean, I think ultimately what it comes down to is, we love this technology and everything because we're passionate about it. But we're passionate about it because we think that it has significant impact for business change, and that's why it's changing everything. If it was only a technology, we wouldn't be sitting here going at a conference, when virtualization and cloud computing conference, we wouldn't have all of these attendees going, why is this the nexus? Why is this going on? Client server changed business models. Virtualization and cloud computing are changing business models. And if you don't recognize that, then you're only doing it from a technology perspective, and you shouldn't be doing it for that reason at all.
But do you think it's curious that, I mean, whatever, take your cliche, we're talking about trite things, the perfect storm for the cloud, the this, the that, whatever. I'm sure they're going to be volcano jokes. But the fact is that most people surely, by now, the resistors, let's call them that, you would have thought they'd been sensitized to the fact that they must come out of the sand and this is the future. I'm just thinking, if you had a non-technologist, because sometimes change can be advanced quicker through the non-technologist, how does one explain to that person why something like virtualization, something like cloud computing is so fundamentally going to change his or her company? Well, I mean, how do you get to it?
When you think about that, a non-technologist is going to be working with a technology organization.
Yes.
And so one of the things that non-technologist has to do is explain to the technology organization how different everything is. And I think they might look at an analogy. I guess you used an automotive example a little earlier, so I'll make one up here and see if it works. Is when people moved from horses and buggies to cars, they had to get different tool sets. The things that they were comfortable with for shoeing a horse turn out to be completely a stretch when you're reshoeing a car. And so, and in a modern car, you normally plug in a computer and it tells you everything that's going on in the car. There's a completely different tool. You don't walk in with one tool here and one tool there and one tool over here anymore. You walk in with one tool, you plug it in, and the car tells you what's going on. And when you switch to a virtualization technology, you're going to be switching to a lot of new tools, and you can't use all of your existing tools and buy another set as well. There's just not enough room in your brain anymore. There's not, you've got enough trouble with a mental model for the business. You can't have a different mental model for the tools that you use at different parts in the business. Was this server virtualized? Well, then I use this tool. Was it not virtualized? Then I use this tool. It's virtualized today. I don't know what tool I'm using anymore. You really have to think and say, stop and think about your tool set and really think about, you've got a brand new infrastructure. You really ought to be thinking, why am I using the old tools on this? Why am I trying to shoe that horse?
If I were to ask my wife, who is not a technologist whatsoever, and say, let me give you an example of the retailer that we talked about in New York.
The garment district.
And here's what they're doing, and here's what their costs look like, and here's how they're able to meet demand and do this completely up and down based on their needs. And then contrast that to a different style organization that's siloed and here are their costs and here are their ability.
And they couldn't react.
And she'd just say, well, why can't every business be like that?
And you say,
and
you get it.
And the answer is exactly.
Yeah, they can.
Exactly. And it can't be, it's only the Web 2.0 style companies that can do that, or it's only the.
No.
It really can be.
I think let's go back to your phrase. If virtualization is the fabric of business agility, how can that not apply to every single business? So there's no possibility that someone watching this says, I don't want to have an agile business. They're all interested in that. Right. Now they should have pricking up their ears for apparently that's something that virtualization and or cloud computing can help me with. So that's the job of work, that one of the jobs of work one can do perhaps from a discussion like this. That you guys have seen it, you have done it.
Yeah.
Bought the T-shirt.
Actually, our customers are doing it.
Yes, they're doing it.
And that is exactly right. I mean, and it's those that have the will to say, we're going to do that. We're going to break through that sound barrier, get to the other side, because when we get to the other side, we're a much better, more efficient, more cost-effective competitor. And that rings truer in the CEO and CFO's ears than anything else could ring.
How do you get the Zenoss name associated through, of course, something like this, but it's still just in general, when you're not in a Times Square studio, how do you get that associated above all else with this dynamism, this analytical flair that you guys clearly have, and then this passion for, and here are the tools. We have cracked this for you, so let us help you. How do you make that connection?
Customer success.
Yeah.
It's ultimately it comes down to customer success. I mean, what prospective customers would like to look at is, tell me about those that have succeeded, and what were they able to do, and how did they do that, and what did they implement? The ability to have, we have a very large open source community as well of 75,000 users, and so and in there we get gems. We get very large enterprises in there, and we've also got 3 implementations down in Antarctica. So so you talk about wide range. I mean, I don't know what virtualization or cloud computing they might be doing down there, but but the point is that it really comes down to customer success, and then in a broader way, like awareness, for example, of the Virtualization and Cloud Computing Expo. I mean, being present so that they're aware of what we can do, and then also being able to dialogue with them and point them to successful customers, because a lot of this is going to be, as we discussed, not just the tooling. If that's like saying I've got fantastic driver management aids in my car. Well,
so everything's solved.
Exactly.
I'm good.
And
I'm good to go.
Exactly. You still need to be a very good driver, or you still need to understand what the destination is or where you're going, and you still need to put petrol in the car if you're going to want to get there. So, frankly, what they want to know, what they want to understand is, if you've got a good car, tell me what a good driver looks like. And give me some examples of good driving behavior.
Right.
And that's what they're looking for, I think, too, more than anything else. Because right now, you'll find that the very large service providers are breaking the bounds and breaking the barriers, and they're going through those sound barriers. But in the enterprises right now, they're dabbling in virtualization. They are thinking, they have cloud envy.
Oh, I like that.
They'd like to go to cloud, but they're kind of wondering how they might get there. It's not very secure in the public cloud, and we're trying to figure out how we do it internally, but let's just virtualize a few servers and we can say we're on the path. And so they've started the journey. But by showing them more customers that are successful, it pushes them along in the journey.
And is it something, does it reach a tipping point where suddenly that number will, become exponential, or is that too much to hope for, that it is just going to be incremental and, over the course of the decade, you and other companies will help this along? Are you expecting it to suddenly explode, or just to keep, going
What do you
well?
think?
It's going fast.
It's so much of the way businesses think about these things is they compare themselves to other business, benchmarking. How is this guy doing?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen, what's really going to tip people over the point is they're going to look and they're going to be doing their benchmarking and they're going to see there's a step function. There's people running on an old cost model.
Yeah.
And there's people running on a new cost model. And so there'll be a cost model step function. The other thing that they're going to see is a revenue step function, where the people on the old thing don't have the agility to change the way they run their business, and the people who are agile are suddenly getting new revenue streams. And so they're going to have cost pressures and revenue pressures all at the same time when they look at it, and they're going to say, oh, we need to get there now. So the pressure and the real pressure is going to come when those two things kick in together.
You were talking, Olivier, about the level at which you can engage with an organization, and then if you're hearing really just the wrong questions, never mind the wrong answers, at this level, you go up. Is there a sort of an inverse ratio? When you then come higher up the stack, is there a possibility that you run into executives who say, well, now hang on, if I now understand this correctly, we can virtualize most anything.
Yes.
And then that is presumably a whole nother conversation. I mean, there is no end to it. How do you deal with that? So you said, well,
Yes, we call it the Alice in Wonderland syndrome.
Yeah, I'm going to say, you have to say steady on.
Yes, that's right. They took the blue pill and they
get bigger.
and they think that.
So that does happen.
Yeah,
I mean, hypothesis.
And then there's the reality of there's also the reality of their own organization, which is you might want to do that for your organization, but you have got a serious challenge of siloed organization syndrome that you need to go deal with, right?
SOS.
SOS, right? Yeah. SOS. So you've got to go and deal with those issues. And then the other thing too is that there is no magic bullet. I mean, even if they said we're just going to outsource it all and it's all going to magically happen, might be somewhat true, but not totally true. The most pragmatic senior executives understand that they need to get hold of these technologies, understand that they have got organizational challenges. They do get it. They know exactly why they're entrenched. They're looking for a little bit of outside help to show the rest of the organization what indeed it can look like. So they might take a sample application, not the bet your business one, but one of the first ones, and say, let's put this out on a hybrid private-public cloud. And then the rest of the organization looks at that and they go, oh, wow. That's pretty neat. I didn't realize we could do that. And that starts the motors running about, well, now let's do the next bit and the next bit and the next bit. So the really smart execs understand that they don't have the Alice in Wonderland mentality, and most of them are not entrenched where they go, no, it's got to, we're 1.0 and we're staying 1.0.
There's, you asked a minute ago, how do we introduce Zenoss into organizations? And this kind of project is actually a perfect example, because a lot of those 75,000 people are using Zenoss in these new projects, because they're saying it's just me and one other guy, and I can't implement a network management tool and a server management tool and a database management tool and an email management tool and a cloud management tool and a virtualization. It's just the two of us. So we really need one product that touches all of this. And so they end up not thinking from a siloed standpoint. And then they start thinking, well, why don't I start bringing some application events in, because it can trigger I need another server to support today's sale. I need some more servers. I need to bring them online. And if I have the application events coming in at the same time, I can really get a good picture of how the enterprise works. And so we find ourselves a lot of times with some very, very smart people who are actually building and running the systems, who are bringing us in because they can have that non-siloed viewpoint, that integrated business viewpoint and technology viewpoint, and then they achieve that success. And then we've had some very big successes because as a result of those early deployments as well.
We've even had, just to give you an example, we've had the CTO of a very major service provider with about 165,000 employees that basically said, we need to change completely how we do things.
So they came to you. I mean, they got it to that extent, but obviously they need help with now what?
They came to us. How did they come to us? And it's fascinating because it shows how the evolution happens. They found us through, believe it or not, their Indian operations were using us in one of their data centers and as a community project, our open source bits. And they started using it and said, you know what, this is really good. And we're saving lots of money and it's improving our agility and we're able to do these things that we couldn't do with these legacy tools. And so we should use this throughout our entire company, and it grew from there. And it got to the point where the CTO was saying, as a service provider, we really need to minimize our costs and improve our agility. And we became the choice that was, as we like to say, the unlegacy choice, which allowed them to move ahead and to do these, get on that journey.
They had connected the dots. They did. They had abandoned the mental maps,
right.
or tweaked them.
Well, they understood. They said, we need something different. We can't, not only do we want to adopt virtualization in cloud, but in order to do so, there's no point in bringing a truckload of legacy stuff to manage it. It's not going to work. We need something very different to be able to handle this new environment. So, there's no point in having for example, there's no point in going to buy this beautiful UCS box, for example, which strips out costs, improves business agility, and then loading onto that very expensive old tools. Well, you're going, why would I do that? I mean, that's silly. So they started thinking more holistically about everything that they were doing as they were moving to the dynamic data center, and said, all right, based on that, we need different technology, different hardware, different organization, and they started thinking about it the right way. And now in that organization, we manage all of the IT to 165,000 people in that organization.
So what should we do then? What should we do to encourage? Let's say that you and you too, and now me, understands that Zenoss is completely synonymous with that approach. Where should somebody go who's watching this and says, I want to find out more about this, and I'd like to find out about these use cases, these best practices, these glowing examples? Do you have that all littered around the site that I can just noodle around and enjoy it and drill down into it?
We've got quite a few case studies in there, and architectural white papers and things that will help educate folks in terms of why you need to think differently. Right. In fact, our whole go-to-market strategy is called Unlegacy for a reason, because it really is, you have to think about it very, very differently.
And Olivier mentioned the open source project. If somebody wanted to try out our software, we distribute the software as a virtual appliance. And so you download it, you bring it up, you're running in about 5 minutes. So it's very easy to explore the product as well as all the success stories.
And that's what's driving that community, presumably.
Yes, absolutely.
You're making it terribly easy to start, and there, of course, they have the energy, they have the ideas, they have this huge variety of places to deploy this.
Well, the beautiful thing, too, is they add to it, too, because they add what you would call in this industry plug-in support for all of these different technologies. So through the course of the year, last year, I think we had over 150 new technologies built by the community. For example, Google App Server, libvirt, and we're talking about cloud stuff. All that stuff was just written by the community recently.
And
pretty neat.
What's the best entry point, physically, on the web? To
Zenoss.com.
Zenoss.org as well?
Zenoss.org. Or Zenoss.org.
They might come either way.
Absolutely.
That's the thing.
Absolutely.
They're very linked.
Who knows?
Yep.
I have a feeling that the traffic at both Zenoss.com and Zenoss.org is going to double this evening and for the rest of the year, because I want to thank both you, Olivier, and you, Kent, for not just talking about virtualization, but making me realize, close the laptop, go and talk to the staff, talk around this. So thank you again, Olivier Thierry, Kent Erickson. Thank you for watching this out there on the World Wide Web. And just remember that if you don't understand that virtualization is the fabric for IT agility, you do now. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.